Well, folks, it's a great opportunity for me to connect in with our 35th District Representatives, Dan Griffey and Travis Couture in Olympia. I'm at my house broadcasting. We've had some wild weather, so I got to stay close to the updates since things were happening all the way up till about 7:45 this morning, changing the school delays to closures. And I know that can kind of cause an issue for families as they've already maybe thought about how to get their kids off to school. Travis, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about school here in just a little bit. But Dan, let's start with you. Last week when I was in the office, you showed me a card that you have been working very hard on for the last many years, your time in the legislature. Tell us about the Hope card. Tell us a little bit about where this came
Sure.
from. There it is right there.
So, domestic violence survivors currently, when they have a protection order granted, so protecting them away from, isolating them from the individual that's causing them harm, they have to carry, 12 to up to 20-page document around to have that protection order enforceable, immediately enforceable. It's pretty important at times, the domestic violence and sexual assault survivors have a real fear that the individual that they're seeking protection from might actually kill them. So it's important that they have an actionable document, one that police officers could engage quickly on. What this does is it miniaturizes that protection order from this big, bulky piece of paper you have to keep in a folder. Maybe your kids are protected under the same protection order, so they all have to carry one when they're separate from their parent. What it does is it miniaturizes it to a very small card. So it's the size of your driver's license, your insurance card. So anytime you leave your house, you'll have an enforceable order. You don't have to worry about having that giant book, if you will.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So, an incident happens. Maybe you have a no contact or a stay so many feet away, and there is an incident. You're out away from your document. The law enforcement officials show up, and you say, "Listen, I have a protection order against this individual. They've come in close contact, or there's a concern I have for my safety or my kid's safety." The officer goes, okay, great. Do you have that? Can we look at that? And if you
Yeah.
didn't have the paper, they might not be able to continue on with helping on that no contact. So this has it right there. They can, is it a phone number? Is it a scannable?
Well, no. There was
Or is
many.
it just a card that says, I have the documentation, please help me look closer?
Yeah, so on one side it's the protectant, and on the other side it's the protectee, and then the person that they're protecting from on the
Okay.
backside. So law enforcement can quickly look at it, check the ID of the individual that they call that the survivor called 911 for, and it's actionable. Law enforcement can detain, can question, can separate the parties, which is exactly what we want to have happen. We don't want the assaults. I mean, the domestic violence is the number one predictability. Lethality is the next thing that happens, right? So what we don't want to see is those begging society for a rescue, respite from the torment that they're going through. We want to see them have seamless help from law enforcement, and we think this gives it to them. It gives them a portability. Over 90 cards have already been issued, and we just started the program the 1st of January. So it is an
Wow.
exciting program, and I think actually I'm kind of old on my data. I want to say that it's almost 200 cards now.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. So in
Yeah.
a mere month, the word has spread that this is an availability. Are these the types of things too where you connect with, Turning Point Survivor Advocacy Center and say, hey, as you're going through your intake there, a reminder, we've got this opportunity, and then go to the other, not that there's a lot of these other survivor advocacy centers across the state, but for those that are out there, you send that information to them too?
Yeah, I just had a meeting on Friday with Meg, the director at Turning Point, and she actually didn't know the bill had already taken effect, and she was very excited. So we're sending her some graphics so she can put some posters up, hand out cards. But just as a reminder, anybody with a domestic violence protection order, a sexual violence protection order, an elder abuse protection order, and one other that I can't quite remember right now, I apologize. Oh, no contact order, that are permanent. So there's a temporary order, which is when you're going through the court process, and then there's a permanent protection order. We are not issuing hope cards, or the administrative office of the courts are not offering hope cards to temporary orders. It's the permanent order once you've gone through the process, which usually takes about 30 days of court process to do that.
Sure, and I guess too, maybe in that when it's temporary, there still might be changes, or it may not be fully adjudicated, or due process and things like that. So once it's finalized for certain, that's when these cards can come out.
Yeah, I don't want to say it because it is so small. The amount is small, but there are people that ask for protection orders that probably don't deserve them. But it's
Interesting.
a very small percentage. Most
Yeah.
of the people that are willing to go through the total hell that it is to get a protection order, that's pretty legit.
Wow. Okay. Well, hey, congratulations on that one. I know you
Thank you.
have
We're
been
really
working
proud of it.
hard on this, and that's been a kind of a cornerstone, keystone of your whole time up in Olympia. Travis, let's turn to you. I know you are working hard on appropriations and the budget and things like that, but in between your downtime, if you really have any up there, you're looking at some additional ways for parents to take a proactive approach to their education of their youth. And this either comes in the form of changing school districts, coming out of the school districts. How is that working? Tell us a little bit about that. And then I think, too, I saw a post either from you or maybe one of your counterparts in the House about just how much districts are paying out in different types of I don't they're not claims, but they're maybe what I'm trying to talk about here. It's sexual assault or things like that.
Yeah,
How the districts are paying out millions of dollars in this.
yeah. I think it's important to just take a step back, and I'll get to my bill in a second. But we just the other day had our national report card come out that talks about all of the educational outcomes for eighth and fourth grade, and even some 12th grade for math, reading, science. Some of the core academic functions, right? And uh, essentially, the Reader's Digest version of what it says for Washington State is that we have the lowest scores in over 3 decades. So we have the lowest educational outcomes in 3 decades in our state, and that's very unacceptable. We are not recovering from even the pandemic drop off that we saw, and we were even dropping before the pandemic. It just got a lot worse. And at the same time, as you mentioned, where we have the lowest outcomes in schools than ever before, we also have the highest amount of dollars into our schools than ever before, highest amount of allocations for K-12 in the state. It's 3 times higher than inflation. It's 110% increase over just the last decade alone. And so I think many people kind of question, who maybe don't follow government that much, that, is giving the education system more and more money getting us the results that we want for our kids. And right now, I think the data shows that that's just not happening. But obviously, schools are important. But I've introduced House Bill 1140, which is essentially school choice. It allows for money to follow the student, and for parents and families to choose the best educational outcomes for their child, utilizing education savings accounts dollars. So they would be able to use this money for tuition, and they could do homeschool, private school, micro school, or they can choose if they like their public school that they're in, they could choose their public school too. But it's not new money. It would come from B&O tax credits. And so it doesn't actually take away money from public schools, doesn't harm public schools at all. And where they have ESA programs in other states, it's becoming very popular. Almost 2/3, actually over 2/3 of states now have school choice policies just like this. And they're going gangbusters right now. And I think this is what America's all about. They want to be able to have choice. They want their kids to learn how to read and do math at the correct level. And we'll get to the second part that you mentioned. You know, they also want their kids to be safe in school, whether that be from other students or from staff. Now, one of the concerning bills, this is the bad part, that's going through the legislature right now is House Bill 1296. And that bill would basically erase the Parents' Bill of Rights Initiative 2081 that was passed by the legislature last session. As you recall, the lights went off. As you recall, like almost 500,000 people signed on to that initiative, and the legislature bipartisanly passed it. And it basically what it said is it codified parents' rights in schools. They have the right to see what their kids are learning in school, their curriculum. They have the right to their health records to see those things, their counseling records, and so on and so forth. And so this bill came to the Education Committee the other day, and one of the things the bill says that if your child was sexually assaulted, including a rape of your child in school by a school staff, any school staff, could be a teacher, could be a principal, could be anybody, the janitor, right? That the school would wait up to 48 hours to tell the parents about that sexual assault. And I dropped an amendment on the bill that struck out 48 hours. I just crossed all that jargon out. And I said, no, we want to know immediately. Now, parents should know immediately if their child was sexually assaulted by staff in their school. I mean, these are supposed to be safe places for our kids. And shockingly, Jeff, the majority party would not accept that amendment. And the fact that they wouldn't accept such a common sense amendment to protect kids, which kind of makes you question, who are we protecting here? That became kind of national news over the
Yeah,
weekend.
I saw that video too online of your committee there doing that.
And of course, I mean, you've seen it over the last, handful of years. We had the school counselor in Shelton High School. We've had a couple different problems up at North Mason. And I think what you're referring to with the payouts for sexual assaults in schools is a chart that was made by the Tacoma News Tribune.
Yeah, that's what it was.
County schools.
Pierce County.
And they spent over a decade, over $52 million in liability payouts for sexual assaults of kids in their schools. And that is absolutely unconscionable. And if you extend that 52 million for, I think I was maybe 70 million, I believe, in a decade in just one of our counties, imagine what it would be for the whole state. And I think for me, this session is about holding our education, the bureaucrats who run our education system, accountable for the results. We want results for what we pay for. We pay a lot for it, right? People's property taxes are pretty high as well. And I know that the schools are suffering in a lot of ways because they've lost some trust with the community, and people are pulling their kids out to do alternative methods. Right?
What are some of the, I mean, I understand that reference there for Pierce County. What are some of the other things that you've found, either of you have found, when it comes to the allocation of dollars in a district, any district, that you feel like are perhaps being mismanaged there? Is it salaries that are too high? Is it extracurriculars? Is it where do the dollars in your guys's where do you see it from? Where do they go that could be reallocated? I bring it up because I remember a conversation, I think, when now State Senator McEwen and I were talking. He was in your position there, Travis, and we were talking about how it was broadly on homelessness and how we continue to pump millions and billions of dollars into the homelessness issue without seeing a lot of return on the back end. And I think some of that either may have been changed or starting to get looked at least. But where are the dollars in your guys's estimation going that could be going somewhere else?
So it is true that we have some of the highest compensated certificated teachers in the United States. I believe we're in the top 3, but I believe we're number 2 amongst the 50 states. And roughly a little over 80% of the state K-12 budget, the allocations go towards wages, salaries, benefits, and stuff like that. And I think it's okay, like, to have well-compensated teachers. We want to be competitive, but then also we should probably have more merit-based things in our system that reward the best teachers, right? Especially in our rural areas, we have to attract people to be teachers here and to live here, right? And so some of that is important, but to drive deeper into your point, a lot of the money that is, you know, I won't say it's always wasted, but like it's misprioritized, maybe, is you got to think of your school system like a 3-legged stool. You have your basic education, that's one leg. You have another leg, which is your career pathway. What are you going to do when you get out of school, and preparing high school kids for that? And then you have a third leg, which is becoming the biggest leg, and that's mental behavioral health, social emotional learning. We in schools focus more on that and spend more money on that. And a lot of times it's the state telling local districts, you must do this, right? And it's that kind of money where it's like it's not actually making any measurable difference right now. I mean, I could show you graph after data after stat that shows you it's not making any difference over the last decade. It's actually maybe gotten worse. And then also we're spending a lot of time and money on that, and it's not helping our educational outcomes. Maybe we should focus a little bit more on the basics and expect more of our kids, as Dan would say, because we can expect more from them. They can do better things if we don't let them run the show. And they are children. You know, we should be running the show and making sure that we're doing the best things for them.
Well, I mean, I have to go ahead. Oh, I have to agree with Travis. What we're doing is not working. We're seeing the numbers drop at a predictable rate. We're seeing the test scores go where they go. But I've said it for years with you, Jeff. We have to be disruptors here. We can't do the same thing the same way we've always done it and see the outcomes. You know, I've told you many times, when you talk to Boeing, the pathway to $100,000 a year career is you need a high school diploma or GED. You have to show up to work on time. You have to do it the Boeing way. And Boeing is telling us, and then that pathway is 5 years, right? 5 years. If you at the entry level, 5 years of hard work, you'll be making $100,000 a year. And Boeing's telling us that it is almost impossible to recruit enough assembly workers in Washington State. We are sadly broken in our system if we cannot produce enough of people that meet those qualifications. We have to be disruptive. We really have to shake this thing up. And in Olympia, like I always like to say, the rudder on the HMS Washington is really small, right? You got to turn, when you turn the steering wheel, it does not turn quickly. But if we don't, if we're not squeaky and say, hey, maybe we focus a little less on social emotional learning. Maybe we start saying the teachers are the bosses again, like when I was in school. Because right now, each individual kid can be allowed, with the way we handle disruptive children, to disrupt the whole class for most of the day. You've heard it. You got school kid, school age kid. My kids the same way. Bullying is still out of control in schools. I mean, one of the number one things that I hear People concerned about our local public schools, and the one that I graduated from is bullying's out of control. Why can't staff do something about it? We're asking those questions. Why can't we do something about it? Why don't we change something? What are the proposals from the office, the superintendent of public instruction? What do you want to do differently? We hear bill reports and bill presentations from OSPI and his committee that they just say, we're going to double down on what we've been doing for years. We want to spend more money. Give us a lot more money to do these experiments. No, let's pay attention to the reading, writing, arithmetic, and expect more from our kiddos. I think our system right now is we expect very little from a kid until they turn 18 years old, bless them as adults and say, no, don't go make any mistakes. We don't really let them get any work experience. So they don't have very much work ethic. Somebody's always made an excuse for them when they failed, instead of having a guided failure process where we can show them how to better themselves. I could go on and on and on. I don't know exactly where the school's spending money. They're in the wrong places, but the numbers show we're not doing a very good job.
When it comes to you guys in the minority party, and I think, Travis, your example of your committee amendment that fell on deaf ears could be a good example of my question here is, have you seen or heard of programs that are more similarly aligned to what you guys would like to do in other states that have a similar makeup of their legislature, maybe run or pushed through by the a majority Democrat party, or ideas from Democrats in other states that you can point to and say, look, I get this, I get that, but here is an example of Democrats, your majority party in a different state that have figured out a way that we can talk about this differently, or they're looking at this issue exactly how we're looking at it. Can we come to the table on this?
Yeah, I think we're always doing that, right? I mean, it's we look to, what are red states doing? What are blue states doing? What are purple states doing, right? Or what are some states that have similar issues to Washington State doing, regardless of what their political affiliation, because maybe they tackled something in a certain way and it worked, right? And sometimes we can make some progress on those things, but like Dan said, the ship turns real slow around here, right?
Sure.
And at the end of the day, like that's kind of the policy space that the minority party has to live in, right? It's got to be able to catch the attention and the support of most Democrats, right, in order to pass here. That's just the pure reality. There's no magic wand or silver bullet for us to get all the votes we need to get what we want done. And so some of our biggest, things we wish we could do, we just simply can't do because we don't have the votes for that. But we were pretty effective, at operating between the lines, to finding the center of that Venn diagram, so to speak, so that we can get our things done. And that's why I think Dan and I are so effective here. A lot of money for our district for important infrastructure projects, road projects, and some good policy too, including things like the Hope Card, which, I mean, I'm super proud of Dan for this, and that's a bipartisan effort too. But he had sheriffs, like Sheriff Sanders and law enforcement show up to say how like this is one of the most impactful things that they've seen come out of Olympia for public safety in a long time. I mean, you wouldn't think that looking at a card, but it's the kind of stuff that we do. But hey, at the end of the day, we're here to be a voice for our constituents, win, loss, or draw, right? And to elevate their voices here.
Well, and to echo what Travis was saying, there are many states. It's not a red-blue state issue, that school choice. Heck, President Obama made school choice one of his top priorities. And he thought that if there were more choices out there, that there would be more innovators in the school process. And then we could copy those school process. In Washington State, it's almost a fight amongst the labor from the public schools and the charter schools, and it shouldn't be a fight. If charter school is if they're doing better, and I think there's some good evidence in Washington State to show many of the charter schools are outperforming or outpacing our public schools, let's copy it. Yeah, I mean, let's copy it. Let's not just instead of what we always do in Washington State. And I think one of the problems is we have a really strong superintendent of public instruction bureaucracy. And there are some bureaucracies that you can talk well about, and some that maybe not so much. I think we need to start looking at what is the bureaucracy doing to it. I got to tell you, one of the problems that I see all the time, North Mason High School constantly says the funding model for how we get transportation allocated in North Mason is crazy. They have to do a special exemption every year because OSPI can't figure out that we don't have a bridge across Hood Canal. It is, by the way the crow flies, it's 2 miles, sure. So they won't refund them for it. But actually, Jeff, if you drive over there, it takes you about 10 miles to get there, right? These kind of weird, backwards, crazy, no-brainer, head scratch things, like, we need that to stop. The governor, I was really excited. The governor, when he was, talking about all these things that he was, he's thinking about that we could change, he suggested maybe we could get rid of the whole office of superintendent of public instruction. We could come up with a direct allocation model to our schools. Yeah, we need to talk about all these things. We need to also empower our school board directors. Our school board directors know exactly what needs to be done. They're directly accountable to the people. But we tell them they don't have as big a say. You talk to any of the school board directors, and I argue all you got to do is read the Constitution, and you know what your job is. Do that job and tell the state regulators that it's my school and I will do things the way that I want it to do. Like, I empower our school board directors to tell them, you got to get up and do you write the curriculum. You can adopt the curriculum. But here, because of OSPI and the other bureaucracies, they don't think that they have the power to do it. It's that kind of disruption that I think, we're uniquely qualified to do, because we really love the public school education. We love children, and we want them to do well. We want everyone to be successful going into the future.
I think it's important to highlight that last part, that we don't hate public schools. We like choice. We want parents to be able to choose what's best for their kids, number one, but that doesn't mean we hate public schools. We want them to succeed, right? We want them to do better. And sometimes it's not the local school district's fault. It's whatever the state has told them you must do, and what funding they've given them for that. And sometimes there's unfunded mandates put upon schools, right? And so they kind of handcuff our local districts a lot of the time. But we got to do a lot better. And so I've been going a little crazy in the ed committee, because I feel like with what we have going on right now, these kids' education matters. Your child is only 0 to 18 years old once, right? You only get one chance at this. And every year that goes by that we don't make it better, we're setting those kids back. And that is a grave injustice to kids and families. And so I think it's worthwhile to hold people accountable, to hold the bureaucrats to task, and to demand better policy for our education system, because it absolutely matters.
Last week, I got an email after our conversation, and we briefly touched on it. It was something the governor brought up, but the Mission Creek Women's Correction Center. It was a email in asking me to ask you guys, what are you doing to help make sure that either stays open or continues to be an opportunity for folks to get corrective justice there in that center, and also for the countless employees, that work at that Mission Creek Center. So where are you at? What have you heard about that? And what are some of the things you guys are looking at on that one?
We're very aware of that. As the Republican budget lead, my budget does not close Mission Creek or any prisons, like the Inslee budget does. But I've been having a lot of talks with the governor, Bob Ferguson's office, And they're signaling they don't want to make any cuts to public safety, which includes prisons as well. So they're not also reviewing, and they don't necessarily want to go down the path of closing prisons like Mission Creek either. It's in our district. We have a lot of people who work there. I think it's a critical part of our public safety system for women in our state. And so we're fighting very hard to make sure that that remains open. But you'll have to stay tuned and continue to watch as it goes along in the process. But just if anyone's listening for that, we're fighting very hard.
Well, we're also working with staff there that, so they have some excess capabilities, to make, Mission Creek a value added, facility. They can take some of the overflow. They have the room to take some of the overflow from some of our JRA, our youth detention facilities, who are very overcrowded. So we're looking at all those options, and we think that's a great one. So I know that my dear seatmate is leaked that possibility to the governor's office. Hey, we can combine and we can make Mission Creek, a value added facility in Washington State. And yes, those employees came here and we got their backs all the way. We want to see them. We need as many corrections officers as we can have. It's not the time to get rid of them.
Yeah, very good. Well, I'll make sure that individual hears that message that you just put out there. And again, I do thank you guys for your time. Thanks for meeting me on Zoom today. And I'll get back down to Olympia and we'll do this in person here before too long. 35th District Representatives Travis Couture and Dan Griffey, thank you so much, guys.
Thanks,
Take care, Jeff.